For more on that, we're joined by criminal defense attorney Bernarda Villalona. She's also been a former prosecutor. Good morning, and thank you for joining us again.
Good morning, Mitch. Thank you for having me.
Quite simply, they did it. What do you think? They decided to put him on the stand, and he went. So what do you think?
Mitch, there's no going back now. So as you can see, he already started with cross-examination yesterday. Actually, he would stand a couple of hours of cross-examination yesterday. So in terms of how everything went out, we knew this is the one decision that everyone was waiting for, and he took it. Alex Murdaugh decided to testify on his own behalf. Yes, it was a calculated risk, but my understanding is that it may have paid off in the sense that doing his direct examination, Mitch, 2 jurors were crying, and that's doing direct examination. That's something you do not want to see as a prosecutor, because you know then at that point that you have at least those 2 jurors that have humanized Alex Murdaugh, and that they feel sorry for Alex Murdaugh, and also that they also have doubt as to his guilt, and that will be a big issue for the prosecution.
Well, not only was it an interesting strategy to put him up on the stand in his own defense, his strategy once on the stand was sort of to say, yeah, I lied. I lied about this and I lied about that and I did all these horrible things. But I was addicted to painkillers. I was addicted to opiates and they caused this behavior. And I lied about X, Y, and Z, but I didn't lie about killing my wife and son. I would have never done that. What do you make of him admitting to several lies, explaining his drug addiction, and then expecting the jury to believe that, well, he didn't lie about the big thing?
Well, Mitch, the thing is that Alex Murdaugh had to admit to those things. That was no surprise, because if you want to gain some credibility with this jury, you had to admit to what there was concrete evidence for. And financial crimes, that is exactly what the prosecution has the best evidence for. So there was no way around it, especially when you had a handful of witnesses of people that you worked with, of former clients that testified how you robbed them of millions of dollars, how you looked at them straight in the face and you lied to them. Because it's very clear, Alex Murdaugh, he is a con artist. He manipulated a lot of people and were able to lie to them with a straight face. So if they wanted to gain any credibility from Alex Murdaugh, he had to admit to it. He could not say that he had nothing to do with the financial crimes. Also with the opioids, they wanted to soften the blow. They wanted to make him more personable, because we know with the opioid crisis, I mean, we have Netflix stories about it. We've had so much legislation about it. So it's something that a lot of people can relate to. The question will be, will the jury buy that the reason that he lied about being at the kennel was, 1, because of his opioid addiction, and 2, because of his distrust of law enforcement? And the great issue I have with that, Mitch, is guess what? When you're talking about distrust for law enforcement, you come from a lineage of solicitors. You, in fact, were carrying 2 badges. You, in fact, were an assistant solicitor, a prosecutor. And take it a step further, when you call 911, the lie started doing your 911 call before anyone was asking you questions or checking you for GSR. So we'll see whether the jury is able to look past his lies and be like, this guy's not bamboozling me now, and he's being honest about not killing his wife.
Well, there was an interesting moment yesterday as well where the judge asked Murdaugh's defense attorney, Dick Harpootlian, and he said, do you need some time to confer with your client? And he said he won't talk to me. He just wants to go do this. And I just wondered if you think there's a split in the defense here where the client himself, who's also a very experienced attorney, said, I'm doing this. And it was something that his defense attorney argued against and said, you shouldn't do this. Is this an indication of that, or is this just a strange moment? Because Harpootlian also at one point pointed an unloaded weapon that was being used as evidence at the prosecution and sort of made a joke about it. So he's done some weird things in court. I wonder if this is on that trajectory, or if you think there are some splits here in the defense.
So in terms of the conversations that Dick Harpootlian had with Alex Murdaugh on whether he wanted to testify, remember that only the defendant can make that decision. That's why Judge Newman had that colloquy with Alex Murdaugh to see if he wanted to testify and was well aware of his rights, that he did not have to testify, because if he didn't, the judge would just give an instruction to the jury and say that you can't hold it against him. However, remember that Alex Murdaugh is an attorney, a skilled attorney. He is a civil litigator. He knows the courtroom. He knows how to perform. He knows the conversation. He knows how to talk to the jury. And he's someone who is very controlling. And he wanted to make sure that he put himself to perform in front of the jury. I am sure that the defense team had long conversations, not just yesterday, but from the inception of this case, from the arrest, on whether he would testify or not, because there are risks when you testify, because a juror can be like, I don't believe you. I don't like your demeanor. I don't think you're being real about your testimony. And I think you're faking a phony, and just convict you based on that and just forget about what the prosecution presented. So there are a lot of calculated risks, especially with a man that has over 100 charges that are still open, financial crimes, where he could have pled the fifth on, took the fifth on those questions, but he didn't. The one thing that we do know, Mitch, is that even if he's found not guilty in this case, he will definitely be found guilty of those financial crimes based on those admissions during direct examination and also cross-examination. So he's going down for that.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation in your cable lineup. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-based, unbiased coverage.